Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and I am doing a complete series review for Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I finished this show, I want to say it was like last week or something like that, week and a half ago, something like that. And I had a really weird history with this show. It was, it's Full Metal Alchemist. It's one of the most popular anime that's out there. I've seen all the references. I saw, I knew about the girl who was turned into the girl and the dog fused together. I knew about that. Craziest thing though, I've never done this before. It's the only time I've ever done this. So years ago, it had to have been. I want to say it was the first time Brotherhood was actually on Adult Swim. I think that was before Toonami actually came back, so it was still just Adult Swim. And it was like, okay, because back then I was, watching Bleach, because Bleach was cool at the time. And it was like, okay, watch my episode of Bleach. It's like, oh, I never really watched Full Metal Alchemist. I think it was when I first got into it, because I was like, oh, I really love this song for the opening. I think it was like the third opening or something like that, third or fourth. Or it had to have been whatever the last opening was. So I was like, okay, this seems fairly cool, and I'm gonna stick around for another half hour. And I ended up doing that for about a month, and then I finished the series. I saw like the last 5 or 6 episodes of like the entire series before I'd ever seen anything of Full Metal Alchemist before. So I saw the end of this series, and that was really dumb to do, but it was such like the end. There was just so much action. I was just like, I can't not watch this. Like I knew nothing about the story. It was just a bunch of super cool action scenes, and I was like, this is pretty sweet. And I watched like the end of the series, and I was like, that was a pretty cool ending. And then that was it, and that was the end. Like I saw the ending to Full Metal Alchemist. Never watched the show. Didn't touch the show. Didn't even think like I'm gonna watch the rest of the series to see what led up to this ending. Never. I was just like, And then 5-6 years later, I was like, gonna do it. Gonna finally sit down and watch it. I had my little free trial on Verve, and so I was like, Full Metal Alchemist. It was one of those shows that I always wanted to catch up on or just watch, and I finally did. And that show is great. And what's super funny about it is that even seeing the last like 5 or 6 episodes of this show, it was maybe only like the last 4 episodes really, but seeing the last couple of episodes did nothing to deter me from all the madness of this series. Like for one, there were 100 million surprises that I did not remember. Like even when I got to the end, I was like, I could have sworn I knew this, and it was like, no, I was wrong about that. Greed died, so that was a different Greed that I saw at the end of the series, which I did not know that until that version of Greed died. And I was like, oh, okay, that's super crazy. I didn't remember that version of Greed was also with Lan Fan. I was like, I totally forgot that happened, because it was like 5 or 6 years ago when I saw the end of the series. So a lot of that stuff I didn't remember. The only thing I remembered was Mustang like lighting somebody on fire a bunch, which was, I believe, Envy at the time. So it was just crazy. It was like I thought I remembered a lot of this stuff, and it was like, nope, that there were like a couple of things I remembered. I remembered Scar got the second arm at the end of the series. I remembered that part. I remembered Roy doing the thing, lighting him up, like getting to the point where he was gonna destroy Envy. And I remember that Ed and Al, like get their bodies back and stuff, but they didn't get like all their bodies back. It was like, they did the crazy transformation with the arm, but he couldn't get his leg back because he gave up his alchemy. So it was like that, like little stuff like that I remembered. And then everything else was like, I didn't know. Even at the end of the series, like I said, 5-6 years later, when they got to showing Greed and stuff, I was like, oh, here's Greed. And he fights the Fuhrer Bradley. And it's like, he was a homunculus? How did I not remember that? Like, I saw the end of the series, and I didn't remember any of this stuff. I was like, he's a homunculus? I didn't remember that. I didn't remember the kid was, Pride. I didn't remember that at all. It was like the last 4 episodes. I should have remembered all this stuff, and I was like, I didn't remember that. I didn't remember he was a homunculus. I didn't remember any of this. I didn't know Lust died in, like, the second season, which was crazy to me. But that was awesome, which, by the way, I just have to note, Roy Mustang has to be my favorite character solely for the fact that he could kill everybody else. Like, it was just super cool to watch that, because it was like, man, that is freaking sweet. Like, he destroyed Lust, which was super awesome. And then he could have destroyed Envy. He was the only one that could really take anybody else down because of his flame alchemy. So I love that, like, because he was so powerful. It was just super cool to actually watch him fight. And that dude was just mad. Like, the whole series, like, his buddy dies, he was just pissed. That was like the whole series was him mad and worrying about his friend. So I really liked him as a character. He was probably my favorite just because of, like, the way his attitude worked. And, like, the scene, the episode where they thought he killed the woman, I was like, man, now I kind of hate him, because I was like, he didn't even try. Like, he went so far in the rage, he just killed this woman and didn't even try. And it was like, son of a bitch. He actually knew that she wasn't guilty, and it was a whole plan to save her life, and then she came back at the end of the series and stuff. I was like, dang, love this dude. He's awesome. So Roy Mustang, I think, is my favorite character in the show. But whole series super awesome. Love all the music. There was one of the songs. I want to say it was for season 3. I've had that song on my phone for years. That's pretty much how I keep track of which anime I've never watched. I'll be like, oh, I saw that one episode and I love that song, and I'll hear it like years later. Like, I should really watch that anime that I found like in 2008, stuff like that. So I've always had one of the songs. I've had like 2 of the songs from the show on my phone for years, and I was just like, all right, at some point I'm gonna see the show that that helped me find this song. But man, it was such a good show. Like, all the characters were cool. The way they introduce characters and the way characters leave, which is one of my favorite things about this show, is that I would say it has what I would consider like I guess technically this came first. So Soul Eater had this story kind of like this, where it's a bunch of characters, and sometimes it's like, yeah, these are the main characters, but we got stuff going on right here. So, Ed and Al can just do their own thing. When they were split up for a long time, it was pretty interesting watching that. And they go through, like, Ed has his different costume changes. Like, when they first go up north, he gets like the winter coat, and then after all that madness happens, he gets like the white jacket, and then they go back to the red and stuff. So I was like, that's cool. It's like his little costume changes as they go through the series. But I love that about this show, where they'll have a ton of characters, and it'll be like, all right, well, we're here in the city. This is what's going on with Mustang and his crew, and then they all get split up, and then they get attacked when they go, against Envy, or go against Lust and stuff like that. His buddy who got injured, like in the beginning of the series, and then they bring him back at the end of the series. Little stuff like that. Like, they'll have side characters where it's like, oh, that's the dude. Which, of course, me binge watching the show is way easier for me to remember, because I'm terrible with like who did what. Like, I suck at names, but I can remember a character's face. But that dude was from like the beginning of the series, and he realized like, oh, she never died, like my friend, and she's still alive. So I was like, oh, that's the guy, because I didn't recognize him at first when he like first popped up with I think those were his kids, where they were talking about the eclipse and stuff. I was like, I don't know who this is. And then I was like, oh, that's the guy that was her partner from like the beginning of the series. So it was just really cool how they would have characters leave for like a super long time, and all the characters were just super awesome. Like, the guy, once again, I suck at names, but the guy who did die, unfortunately, early on in the show, which I didn't realize that was so early in the series, and he dies, and it's like, they spend so much time, because Ed and Al left the day he died, so they spend a ton of time away, and like, they have like a full-on couple episode story arc where they're gone, and then they finally come back, and it's like, it's been a while, episode-wise, at least, it's been quite a while, but it was only like, I think it was only like a couple of days. As far as the actual show was only like a day or 2, but it was like quite a few episodes in the show. But they finally come back, and that's how they find out that he died. And it was just like, man, this is nuts. Like, this is crazy. And that's what kicks off like this whole journey with Mustang and his vengeance and stuff. But whole series was super cool. They're like, the way they did the characters, I just think was so incredibly well done. Like, I just loved everything for this show. Like, the pacing was really well done. The characters are great. It has some of the tropes where it's like, the hero is so good that he makes the bad guys turn into heroes. But it also makes sense, because the bad guys are insanely bad in this show. So it's like, you have like the peak where it's like all the different enemies, all the different homunculi, and then under them you have all the people who are like Chimera and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, we're with the bad guys and stuff like that. And then when they bring in the one dude who was like always in the suit and stuff, he finally came in. That's another great example of, they just show characters and then they pop up. It feels like years later. Like, that dude was shown in like the first season. He was in prison. I was like, okay, I know, I recognize that guy. And he's in like random flashbacks where he's blowing stuff up because they have this violent war. And so I'm like, all right, who is this dude? He showed up in like the first season, and they show him like give a smirk or something in prison. And he didn't become a part of the show until like the last 2 seasons. And he was only there for like a season and a half, and then he didn't even make it to the end. He died, and then he was eaten by Pride. And it was like, I mean, ultimately, when you think about it, he was not in the show for that long, but he had like that whole arc when they were in the North. He was the main villain there, chasing them down. And it's just crazy. It was like, that dude got introduced as a glimpse in the beginning of the series in prison, and it was just like, yeah, they throw his name around a little because they have the flashbacks with the Ishvalan War, but he's not a part of the show until like the end, pretty much. And even then, he's only like a full part of it for like a season and a half, if even a full half. And it was just like, that's nuts. Like, that is really freaking crazy. Like, that's how he got introduced. And I still remembered him because I knew that was the dude in prison. He was the only person. And they would kind of touch on him a little bit every once in a while. Then he came back in as a like full-on villain, and he had the Philosopher's Stone, and he had it on him the whole time. And then he finally gets out, and it's like, all right, time to do some damage. And so it was just like the way they introduce characters is really cool. The way they set up the characters, the way they have, like I said, the different levels where you have people like Fury Bradley, who is like the be all end all of kind of badass characters. He was super cool as a villain. Like, I loved him. He was like insanely hard to beat. It takes everyone to fight this dude. Like, he had to be beat up by like a dozen people before he could actually get killed. Like, he had to fight against Greed. He had to fight against well, I guess both versions really, like one body with two different people, both different versions of their skills. He had to fight against them. He had to fight against the older guy. He had to fight against the guy's granddaughter. He had to fight against the dude with the chainsaw arm, getting randomly shot by other random side characters as he's in the middle of this battle. So he takes on all these different hits and explosions and falling in the water, all this, and then finally it comes down to him and Scar. And even Scar says, like, if it weren't for those wounds, I'd be dead. And that was pretty much it. And it was just like, that's how tough that guy is as a character. So great villain. And then everyone else was just as insane. Envy was awesome as a character, like the way they do that story arc. Greed was really cool, where he like gets the memories of the former version of himself, and that's why he turns against everybody. So that was pretty awesome. And then, like I said, with some of the other people who were like transformed and stuff, they weren't exactly homunculi, but they're like the chimera. They decide, well, we basically been let go. Like, they don't give a crap about our lives. They just let us, crumble, die inside of crumbling buildings. So sure, Ed saved our lives. Like the two guys that he ended up saving, they were like, well, the kid saved our life, so we got to save him back. So they end up rescuing him, and then they end up joining him. And then on the other side, like both Ed and Al, they both do the same thing pretty much, where it's like, hey, if you kind of want to join us, you can. Like, the bad guys are super bad. You guys are just like kind of bad. And then they're like, yeah, I guess we'll be good guys now. And that's pretty much how it works. But it totally makes sense in the show, because it's like, well, we've been experimented on. We've been betrayed by like the ultimate villains. So sure, we got nothing. We'll join you. And then, that's just how it keeps going. So really love the way the show played out. Obviously with me doing like a complete series review, it's mostly just me kind of gushing about how much I like the show. I think it was really good. Favorite episodes, I would definitely go with when they did kill Lust. Man, like I said, Roy Mustang doing that was just super freaking cool. The ending fight scene against Father and all that. Oh, that's another crazy thing that I never knew. I did not know that Ed and Al's dad was not Father. I just thought it was the same person. And then it was like, oh, that's actually two different people. Because I thought when he first showed up that it was going to be like, oh, he has like a crazy, because he did some weird experiment, he has like a split personality or something. And then I watched it, it was like, oh no, that's actually a different character. I never knew that the whole time. I just thought, oh, the villain is their father. That's like in the opening, it was like they show the main villain who is Father, and then they show Hohenheim, and I just thought it was like, oh, these are like the two sides of his personality. So it was like, nope, that's literally a different character. Never knew that the whole time. And then that happened. I was like, oh, I thought I knew. I thought the whole series, like seeing the opening a million times, just thought this dude was the same person, different personality, different character altogether. So that really surprised me as well. But everything they did with them at the end was just awesome. Like the last couple episodes are just insane. Like the action is absolutely intense. The story arcs for some of the characters do wrap up, particularly for both Greed and Envy. Even Pride gets like a redemption where Pride is like the evil kid that gets destroyed, and Al or Ed, I'm mixing them up. I'm like just like just going back in my mind. I'm like, I can't even remember who is who right now. But just in general, whoever saved the kid saved him. But it was just awesome. Like he gets to restart as this little kid, and it's like, they have like the little epilogue thing where it's like, if something goes crazy, we might have to, take him down because, that's too risky. But all of it was just well done. Like the villains get redemption, the heroes get to, do their thing. It doesn't work out. It's not like the perfect ending where it's like, oh, I helped my brother get his body back and I got mine back because like I had to give up my alchemy because he gave up his body to give me my arm so we could actually win this fight. And it was just like the way they did this was just so well done. Even their dad got to have like his little bit of redemption where at the end, it's like a great line where he's like, after all this time, like everything's good and I get to be with my boys. It's like, now I actually do want to live a little bit longer. And it's like, it's kind of funny. Like now I finally actually want to live a little bit longer. And that's when he dies in front of his wife's grave. So that was like a crazy great scene. I was like, that's a great way to end that for his character. But all in all, great series. Looking forward to watching the movie because I know it's something. That was like the one thing they kind of introduced it like right at the end there. I feel like they mentioned it maybe somewhere in season 2. I think they did somewhere early on in the series, but they do it a couple of times at the end where it's like, we failed before and we didn't save that one person. And I was like, who's this one person they're talking about? Because I was like, I don't remember them mentioning this. And then it was like, oh, this is the setup because they knew they were making the movie. So they kind of just set that up like, yeah, we failed this before, so we have to fix this, this thing. So that's kind of where the movie comes into play. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and, how that is going to end up playing out. But great series. It's just super fun just watching it, and watching them do the alchemy was just super cool. And just everything about it was just really freaking awesome. The characters were cool. The fights were really sweet. The animation for the show I've always loved. I always thought, just looking at the opening, they have some great animation for that series, and they didn't really skimp on the animation. So I had a great time just visually looking at the show. The way they did callbacks was just phenomenal. Like, they have a callback to literally the first episode in like the last 4 episodes of the guy who was doing like the ice alchemy in the very first episode, where Ed and Al end up fighting him, and he's like, you guys don't understand what's happening. I'm doing this for the greater good. Like, he's going to destroy us all. And they flash back to that in like with like 5 episodes left of the series, or maybe it was a little bit more, when they realize everything that was happening with Bradley and all that stuff. And they have a flashback to the first episode, and I was like, I can't believe they did that. Like, most shows don't do that sort of thing. And I knew they would. Like, even when it was said, I was like, they're going to flash back to this. And it happened so much later than I thought. I thought it would be, maybe a season or 2 in, not like in the last 10 episodes, they flash back to the very first episode. Like, you don't know what's happening. Like, he's crazy. He's going to kill us all. And I was like, that is nuts. Like, they flash back to the first episode. So just little stuff like that, story-wise, I loved. Like, as someone who's like trying to write stories, like, that's why I love this show so much. Like, the way they introduce the characters, the way characters can just disappear for a super long time, where it's like, all right, well, that's not where we are. Sometimes we'll get updates on them, and that was another thing that I did love, where sometimes it didn't matter who the main character was. It was like, this is what matters, is the story. So for now, the story is the main character. We'll see those guys later. Ed and Al can do their own thing, but right now you need to know what's happening right here, because this is going to affect this thing, who knows how many episodes down the line. So I loved the entire series for its story, for sure. Characters were awesome. Like I said, action and animation was great too. Music was pretty good too. I liked a lot of the openings and endings. But all in all, love the show. Would love to know your thoughts on it. If you have seen Full Metal Alchemist, if you have not seen it, I don't know why you watched this whole thing and I spoiled it for you, but watch it in 5 or 6 years, maybe you'll forget like I did. And I watched like the last 5 episodes, didn't remember a single thing. I was like, I remember this, and this. Didn't know he was a homunculus. Didn't know the kid was a homunculus. Forgot about this. Forgot about that. The only thing I really remembered is that Roy had like the little mustache. I think they took that off where I was watching it, because I remember seeing that where he was in bed when he was blind and he had the little mustache, and I think they edited that out because he never had it in the manga. So I think they took that out, because I was like, I know I saw that. I remember talking to somebody about that because she hated it, and she was like, I had to go right to the manga to see if he had the little mustache. So I was like, I'm pretty sure the version I saw, they're like, yo, let's just take the mustache out. So he didn't have it until they did like the little clip show spot at the end where it shows everybody like kind of in the future and what they're doing, and then he had the mustache. Because I was like, I was so sure he had that mustache when he was like in the bed, but that was kind of funny he didn't have it. But great series. Like I said, would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about the series, your least favorite parts. Would love to know your favorite characters. Like I said, for me, Roy had to be my favorite, just because, for one, he was so powerful. Like, especially when it got to later parts of the series, because I always thought it was just like snaps his finger, fire shoots forward. And then there's some parts, I think it was when they first got into the battle, where it was like they were doing everything to not kill anybody. So he's snapping his finger, and there's like little sparks going off, and there's like explosions above people's heads, and he's like sending flame, like he's snapping his fingers. It's like traveling down, hallways and crap. And I was like, I didn't realize he had that much control. And they even talk about that a little at the end when he's fighting. It's like, you didn't know I had like pinpoint accuracy, where Envy's coming right at him, and he's just like, boom, and he just burned the eyes, and that was it, and nothing else happened. I was like, that's insane. Like, they kind of saved that for the end. Like, everything else was just like bombastic explosions, and then right when it came down to the end, it was like, nope, I can, boom, right in the eyeballs, and that's it. And like burn your fingernails and little stuff like that. So he was super cool in his vengeance, and the way he was as a character I thought was cool, because he would do like the darkest stuff seemingly, but then you find out that underneath all that, the harsh exterior is like, no, he's a good dude. Like, he's just trying to save the right people, and ultimately he just wants his revenge for his friend in the end. So love the way they did that, especially with the way it ended, where he finally figured out who it was, and when it comes down to it, he's not the one who actually, he didn't kill Envy. It was just like, you wallow in your own despair sort of thing. So it was a really cool way to handle that vengeance for him. That was how it ultimately happened. But love the show, obviously. Like I said, want to know what you guys thought about it. Favorite characters, least favorite characters as well. I can't really think of a character that I just did not like as far as they were written bad or anything. Certainly characters that were just like, man, that's just an a-hole. I mean, pretty much all the homunculus, but Fury Bradley was just like, that dude's just bad. Like, I just don't like him. Like, he was just bad like the whole time. It's just like, this dude is no joke. But all the characters I thought were fairly well written. No one was ever really minor. Like, the most minor characters I think were I guess technically was the girl from the first city Ed and Al went to. Like, even she came back later in the series after, like, that whole town got destroyed because it was, like, religion and all this stuff. And then they come back later. It's like, oof, whole city's destroyed and it was absolute chaos. It was like, no, we kind of needed this because we were following some fake stuff and everything. And it was like, she was in one episode and then they brought her back. And then she was in more episodes at the end of the series than she was in the beginning. So it was just crazy. But I don't think anyone was ever just like, oh, that's just a crappy written character. Not to me, at least. But we'd love to know, like, your favorite characters and least favorite characters, favorite moments, favorite just full-on episodes, things like that. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And, of course, thanks for watching.